Then I'll ask you to hit record. Oh, you did it already.
All right.
All right, I'm hitting go.
Okay.
Howdy, folks. We'll just be waiting for a minute here to let more people trickle their way in. Starting promptly at 1 is no longer a thing that happens in the digital era. Everything is a minute or two late as people come from their last Zoom meeting into their next Zoom meeting. But while we wait, I'll just do a little bit of tap dancing. Thank you all for coming. This is the third in our advocacy training series. We have a couple of others that if folks are curious, if you're Clean Energy New Hampshire members, you can find them on our YouTube our channel, which is a funny thing to say out loud. The other ones were about sort of lobbying 101 and how to talk to lawmakers. And this one is one that's sort of near and dear to my heart as a former reporter. It's about trying to get yourself covered on the TV or on the radio. Um, so that said, why don't we dive in? I am going to introduce our co-presenter today, Kate Sullivan, with Kick Public Relations, a longtime friend of mine. So, Kate, tell us about yourself.
Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks, Sam, for inviting me. I love to talk everything public relations because I feel like it's a dying art form, and it is. Yep. I have Kick Public Relations based right here in New Hampshire, and I work with small businesses and larger businesses to help get media coverage in newspapers, online, TV. That's everything from press releases to direct media relations. I'm sure if Sam was still in where he is, I'd be sending him some sort of an amazing story that he was going to have to cover. And so I really try to work with my clients like that. Yeah, I just happy to be here and share this secret sauce.
So we are recording this webinar. It will be up on our YouTube channel later. So if anyone registered but isn't able to make it, hopefully you're enjoying it after the fact. Just a quick roadmap for where we're going to go. We're essentially going to go through how all the things you need to think through if you're hoping to be covered in a traditional media outlet. So this is not about social media, which is what everything is sort of pushing towards, but really is about the traditional earned media. And it's also not about paid media, because of course another way that you can get onto the TV is to pay for advertising, and like that's not what this is about. This is about how to get earned media, how to be covered by the local journalists. So I think we'll just dive right in. So real quick, Clean Energy New Hampshire, for those who aren't, if you're new, this is us. This is who we are. We work in the advocacy space, both at the state level. We are testifying at the legislature and also interacting with executive branch regulators at the Public Utilities Commission or any other agency that might be making rules that will impact the clean energy transition. We also are working in local communities. We've got Catherine here who is with our Energy Circuit Riders team, as well as helping out on the policy side of things. Those Energy Circuit Riders are out in local communities helping towns pursue clean energy at the local level too. So just in case you stumbled into this webinar without knowing who the heck we are, that's us. But into news. So I think the thing to start with is to understand exactly what news is in the minds of the journalists who are creating it, so that you can avoid some of the pitfalls that people who are not familiar with that definition fall into. This is a slide. This picture is from the museum, which I think actually closed. It's
Oh,
nodding.
bummer.
The museum is down in DC. It's one of the DC museums that you can attend for free if you're ever down there. And it's the definition here of when a dog bites a man, that is not news because it happens so often. But if a man bites a dog, that is news. I feel like is like a really brilliant little encapsulation of how to think about this. And that's really the first thing you need to be thinking through for yourself is the thing that I'm trying to get an outlet to cover, is it news? So Kate, thoughts on that? How, what is news?
Yeah, so I think, especially when you're working within an organization and you live and breathe what you're doing, I think everything is news, right? Like it's exciting for you. But what's really important to note is that, you've got all these different stories going on that different reporters from your favorite, newspapers or TV programs, they're just constantly taking in all this information about, political news, local news, crime news, all of that stuff. So you kind of have to take a step back and say, like, this is news to us, but like, either how do we serve this up to this person or this publication so it fits within their kind of like, I would be psyched to share this because this is something that I think people really need to know about your organization. And I think that's really hard for some people to just call out those highlights and the differentiators, or maybe even just like spin it a bit. But sometimes news to us, unfortunately, is not news to everybody. And if we put out news that we think is, and it's just falling flat, in the end, it kind of I don't want to say worsens our reputation, but reporters want to keep coming back knowing that you're a resource that they can go to for, they get it, like that you get it.
Yeah. And I just want to double click exactly what Kate just said, is that back when I was a journalist, there were folks that would reach out to us who you knew weren't wasting your time, who they understood what news was, and if they were reaching out to you with something, it's because it was worth paying attention to. And that repeated interaction with people who understood what news was, um, like builds a relationship that leads to you listening to those types of people more often. And so like there's a couple things on the left side of the screen here, which is like different types of news. I won't read them to you. You can just look at them and think about them. But things to think through are timeliness. A thing that I see very frequently with folks that are writing press releases is they'll have an event, they'll do something that they think is news, and then like a week later they send out the press release. And it's like you're working against yourself if you send something out after an event, because if it happened a while ago, there's a certain type of news that's like, oh, this is no longer news. It's old. Impact. Is this does this like why does the audience need to hear about this? Is it going to affect them, or is it affecting just a very small community of people? That the more people that whatever it is that you're trying to get covered affects, the more likely it is that the outlet is going to want to cover it. Novelty, it's the man bites dog thing. Sometimes press will cover a story just because they cannot help themselves, because the story is just like such a weird thing that they just want to cover it. And just also like think if think about the proximity, the location of what it is that you're working on. Like, is it relevant to the audience of the outlet that you're pitching to? And then also, I think the thing that you should really think through is like the story itself. And when I say the story, really mean like in the literary sense. Like, is there sort of an arc here that leads to a nice story that a journalist might think, wow, that is just a really good story. And that could be a human story, it could be conflict, it could be, all of the things that we know make a good story. Anything else you want to add here, Kate, before I go to the next slide?
No, I'm totally in agreement with you.
And I just want to, like, I didn't say this at the start. We will have Q&A at the end. We're going to hold the questions to the end though, and we'll leave time for that when we get there. So okay, so I like to talk about the culture of journalists as well, because I think that it's really important to understand what journalists are looking for and how they view themselves when you're reaching out to them. And so like I have this sort of like these values here on the screen, and what that then translates to you as someone who's trying to pitch. So everything that's here on the left is sort of like what if you were to go to journalism school, what they would teach you at journalism school. And then what's on the right is uh, is the types of things that that might you might want to foreground in terms of what your story is about. And these are a little bit like Clean Energy New Hampshire centric. For instance, as I've got the humanity one here. So like, what is the human impact of clean energy? Is that it can be affordable and like it can scale to meet this massive challenge that we have in climate change. But like depending on what stories you're pitching, it might lead to different sorts of values on the right that you'd want to foreground. Um, hey, sorry, throw to you here. Thoughts about journalists and who they see themselves as?
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add to that. I mean, I um
Well, so my thought here is when we talked a bit about what's helpful to journalists versus
Mhm.
what's like
Yeah,
a PR pitch,
yes.
and helping to
Right.
understand your pitch and how it's aligned with journalistic values.
Yeah, and I think the key word there too is just helpful. Like the way that I see everything that I do when I'm writing to a reporter is I'm trying to really be helpful in that, whether it's, all the information or an alignment with, their principles and, the kind of writing that they do. Every writer is totally different. And then that goes back to making sure that you're doing the research on the people that you're writing out to. Um, but helpful, like I can't express that kind of enough. Like um, being just somebody that, like Sam said earlier, people can just rely on, people can trust, people know that you are going to give them information that is ethical and is in alignment with what they're writing about and can be useful.
And I think also understanding that there's like a culture of skepticism
Mhm.
in a lot of outlets, and so sometimes they don't like to get pitched
Yeah.
because
Yes.
they everything they get they wanna there's a saying in journalism. It's like if your mom tells you she loves you, check it out. So they're whatever it is that you're bringing to a journalist, you should know that they're going to like see it with a bit of an arched eyebrow,
Yeah.
and so like cultivating that trust where a reporter knows that this is a person that brings me good information and isn't trying to like spin a story to get a certain outcome, but it really just understands the work and is trying to help me get the word out about something that's important to my audience.
Yeah,
Um,
I think public relations, like it's a craft and it's really fun and like I love it. But I think when people say to me like you're so good at sales, it like hurts a bit because I don't want it to be sales. I don't, and we don't want to come across as selling something. And I think good public relations is when you're able to send that out with that's it's why I send a lot of my emails like, hey Sam, like, hope you're doing well, just this more kind of human interaction rather than this like I don't want to say fake, but because at the end of the day, you are selling something that you want them to buy. But you don't really want it to feel like that.
right. And the other thing I think that when it comes to this value of accuracy that truth and accuracy that journalists genuinely do hold is that there's a tension between the timeliness uh, imperative for news journalists where they want to break the news, like they want to be the first to get it out there because that there's a strong incentive for them to do that because that helps them capture audience. It helps the sort of the revenue model for journalism when you're an outlet that's known for breaking news and bringing things to your audience first. And then on the other side, you have the but we want to get it right. And that's where there's a really nice synergy between folks that are in the like, public relations world or maybe work for a company or are like working for an energy committee at the local level where you have the information and you have it right at your fingertips. And the journalist wants the information that you have, and a key service that you can provide is bringing together all of that really good, accurate information that would take the journalist days to track down, but you know right where it is. And so something you can do is bring that all together for them, get it to them on the timeline that they need in order to get the story out. And that's where I think that there can be a really great overlap between what the journalist wants and what you want as someone who's trying to get the story to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to add something, but keep going.
Yeah, we got time.
Well,
Um,
I was just going to say, the real win here is a relationship between a reporter and a PR person is when you've done all that and you have, become this person that is trustworthy. Frequently will get called by a reporter about something because in the past that they've known that I have delivered them the information that they needed. Whether, if I can't get it, like I'll get it for you, or I know who's doing that. And that it just all of that just takes time and cultivating, but that is the type of kind of back and forth you want. Especially in like a New Hampshire media market, where there's a lot of this when there's government affairs and just all of that. I think it's that whole like along the line of being helpful. I don't have all the information, but look, Kate works in that world. I bet if I call her, she can help me facilitate that story with interviews and stuff like that.
Yep. And I can't emphasize this enough is that I think, that sort of frankness and forthrightness that we have on the top right there is just a really valuable thing to like when you're speaking to a journalist, they like if they can sense that you're being honest and frank and forthright, it will pay dividends down the line. Like even if there's something about whatever it is that you're trying to get covered that you prefer not to be in the story, I think it's worth it to sort of think about how you can confront whatever that is head on, because there's a chance that the reporter might find out about it through someone else, and then you might not like what's reflected in the story, and then B, again, this is about a repeated interaction that you're hopefully going to have with this journalist over time. And so that builds trust with them that you're the type of person that they should turn to with questions like these down the line. Kate, we were going to talk about things that kill pitches. What's a bad way to pitch journalists?
Overselling something. Big, bold fonts, and this is the best thing ever. Um, I mean that's I'm sure that, people know that, but just like overstatements of things. No data, no statistics, no kind of substance to it. I don't even think that'll like get opened.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the landscape. So this is maybe one of the most important things, and honestly, maybe this should have been the first slide. Um, uh, I think one of the most important things you can do if you're hoping to pitch stories to the legacy press in particular is to be a consumer of the news yourself first. Like if you're not looking at WMUR at their website every day, and if you're not watching their newscast, you're not going to have a sense of what it is that newsroom tends to cover, and your pitches are really likely to be way out in the rough, to mix a metaphor here. So the thing I would just encourage everyone to do is be just an active consumer of the local news. And if there is an outlet that you think in the future you might want to be pitching, get yourself a subscription. Like I'm a big fan of local newspapers. I still get the print Concord Monitor every day. It gets thinner and thinner every year, which makes me really sad. But it really helps you to know what it is like that the Concord Monitor newsroom values and the types of things that they might want to cover. Um, Thoughts, Kate?
Yeah, I mean, also I use Google Alerts a lot for different topics that I worked for a while in New Hampshire mental health, which, there's no shortage of coverage of that. But I wanted to know who was talking about it, what was being said. And then eventually you kind of, get a sense of who's writing about it, who is, writing about it factually and accurately, because that is an issue. But it's consuming the media. It is a time consuming role to really understand who your outlets are in your region. And I know not everybody has time for it, but it's a really it pays off, because you're just going to be able to say, no, not this one, not this one, not this one. But then let's say you have like five that that's you're really wanting to work with. And then you realize that and you start going over and trying to find the reporters. And, it sounds daunting, but going back and seeing what they've written and what type of content and topics, in order for you to get it to the right person where they're going to pay attention.
And all of that, frankly, it is daunting, but all that's easier if you're sort of like an active daily consumer, right? So if like you open your local paper every
Yeah.
day and
Hmm.
you see like here's the byline of this reporter, here are the things that they cover, you'll just start to get in the groove of understanding that. And then also like on the bigger picture, we've got the whole landscape here. If you're consuming different sources from all throughout the state, you'll start to get a sense of who covers what, right? So like political stories. WMUR has Adam Sexton. They have a political segment every Sunday. Like a political story has a better chance of getting covered by WMUR because that's something they cover really actively. Business stories like you've got Business New Hampshire Magazine, the New Hampshire Business Review, like it says it in the name, and so thinking through like what are the things that these outlets tend to cover, where what are the reporters that have beats that are specific. NHPR has an environment and climate reporter, so they will tend to cover those types of stories, and like you should know who that climate reporter is and how to pitch that person.
Yeah,
Um,
like New Hampshire Business Review, I really love too. So they've got the section where, you guys probably all know, but like articles and what's happening, but then they've got this other section in the back that's like movers and shakers or who's moving. And so, in one outlet, there could be several opportunities for you to find your space, or a good spot. And so maybe it is just, and again, like op-eds, we haven't even talked, we didn't even put that on the list. Yeah. Okay,
true.
we didn't, but that's a whole other section of an opportunity for some good press.
Right. And yeah, so like who has an opinion page and how do you
Yeah.
write into that opinion page? Like these are all things that you'll be more aware of if you're actively consuming. And then I think, the other thing to highlight here is what is their audience? Like what is the geographic area that they're going to want to cover? And this is a thing that can be very frustrating, I think, for local folks who are working on cool local projects, is that it can be really hard to attract the attention of an NHPR or a WMUR to something that's really just specific to your town, because those outlets think of themselves as statewide. And so a thing I would hear all the time in the NHPR newsroom is why would someone in Salem care about that? If it's a story that's happening in Bethlehem. And so that's the thing you should be asking yourself too, is like, okay, I have this local story that I want to pitch to a statewide outlet. Why would someone in Salem care about my story? And then if the answer is like they wouldn't, then maybe you'd be better off pitching your local newspaper, and saving the time, of trying to get that statewide coverage. Next slide.
Hmm.
Hey, this is you.
Okay. Well, I feel like we've, been talking a little bit about this, but I have also presented for, nonprofits, and so that's why it says like donors. But it all applies to everyone. So again, building the relationships with the journalists. I think that it's very easy for people to write up a press release and send out a mass email. And I'm not to say that I don't do that or I haven't done that if there's some sort of event, and sometimes it's easier. what's happened more now, especially after COVID, so when I first started out in public relations over 20 years ago, there used to be like mastheads. You would walk up, you'd get a magazine, and everybody would be listed there. And then they had their emails, and it was pretty straightforward because everyone that worked at the newspaper or at the magazine was listed there. Well, now we're in a world where there's not a lot of people on staff at print publications, online publications, and there's just a ton of freelance journalists. And that in itself, is a really hard thing to manage. I will put a plug in for CENH, which is a PR tool, which kind of helps to comb the media landscape and find different reporters, even if they're freelance or whatever. So it's really hard to sometimes find those people, but it's really important. I will also say, there's been people who, had maybe covered, sustainability and environment and now have been pulled over on to mental health. And this is actually like a real true story. And so there's constantly, because of the shift in the way that media has changed, they're pulling people out of certain beats or adding on, I know you do this, but can you also do this? And so that's where the kind of back work, the work that Sam was talking about, where you're consuming these publications every day, you're just reading them and you're learning about the names. Oh, she used to do this, but I guess she's also doing this. Like that same mental health reporter that was doing environment and sustainability is now also, and this is true, covering my local town news. I think that's like, it's also New Hampshire. We're a small state. We don't have a lot. There's not a big pool. And I think everyone's just looking for people to chip in where they can. And so I just can't emphasize it enough, is just trying to find that. And then, the mass emails, really try not to use those unless it is like an event or an announcement. And again, you still have to be really, you don't want someone being like, spam, get me off, spam, get me off. Because again, the wide-reaching net can absolutely backfire. And I think I said that right below the example. And I know it seems super basic, but it's important.
The the here at Clean Energy New Hampshire, often we'll get the question like, should we write a press release about this? And my instinct is almost always to say no to that question. And that if we think something is news, is a story, that
Uh-huh.
almost always a better way is to like pick a couple reporters that we think will cover it and might be interested, and send them like a one sentence email that says like, "Hey, did you see this?"
Uh-huh.
And like include a link or include like a PDF that might whatever it is that we're trying to get their attention to. And then you like start a conversation with that person and see
Yep.
what their interest is.
Hmm.
And then when we are doing press releases, I'm always like we should, if we're going to write a press release, A, like it has to tick all the boxes of like, is this news? And then B, we're going to spend no more than like 40 minutes writing a thing. We're going to get it out the door because it's a like, high volume, low probability strategy. And like you shouldn't overthink it. Just get it out and see if anyone's interested after the fact.
And I don't know if this is a place where we want to talk about the difference between press release and media advisory. And in New
Yeah.
Hampshire, yeah, so in New Hampshire, I think the media advisory, especially because of the politic scene here, the politics, government affairs, I should say. So, the media advisory is very helpful because that is just like what it is. Like it is this is the event, this is where it is, this who's going to be speaking. If you need information, reach out to us. Like there's really no other kind of like fluff in there. That's just like get to this event. It's a press conference, it's a speaking commitment. The press release is more of the like,
A thing happened.
a thing
Yeah.
happening, there a merger, something like that. And I think I think those are two things that are very important to like call out, like, and they're both have separate needs. One of them is to make sure that the media like gets there and knows about it and shows up. And the other one is like looking for like longer coverage or like a story.
And we'll, if there's an event that we think is, checks all the boxes of news and reporters will want to cover it, we'll often go through sort of you start with, you have a media advisory that is just what Kate said. It's when, where, who, all the W questions, and then that goes out a week before. You maybe remind them the day of. Hopefully, they come and attend the event. And then you have a press release that's like a very short version of what happened, that you can then send to reporters who weren't there, and there's a chance that they might pick it up that way and call you back after the fact to get some coverage of it. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, and so Sam, earlier on, by the way, you had said like, not following up after an event, and I kind of sat on that for a minute because it's something like this. Like, if there is something that happened and that is, and you have photos, and I think that you do follow up after and you say, this is what happened and this is newsworthy, so I kind of like, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. It's just it's timeliness, right? So
Yes,
so
right.
if because I see this all the time where something happens, it's like on the edge of newsworthy, right? Like maybe it's news, maybe it's not. Sort of depends. Like if it was a slow news day, a newsroom might want to cover it. But instead of sending a media advisory ahead of time, the organization sends a press release about it a week later. And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yes,
okay, well,
right. Yeah.
like you might have gotten a reporter there, but instead you're like, here's this thing that maybe you would have covered a week ago, in which case you're sort of shooting yourself in the foot. So if there's something that happens that's like a big deal, and it's the type of story that is going to be ongoing, impacts people's lives, and there was like a key pivotal event. Certainly, reaching out to reporters a week later and being like, "Hey, did you see this thing that happened last week?" Planting the seed for, you might want to cover this in the future. The next time there's a development, that's absolutely a strategy that I would advise people to engage in.
Yeah. Okay, so we're here. Another I know this
We sort of cannibalized your slides earlier on. I'm sorry, Kate.
I love it. No, I love it. It's all, and people are probably like, we get it, Kate. Build relationships. God. But it's a big deal. I kind of want to go down to the being helpful. So one of my colleagues is on here. When I say it's really important to kind of write everything, you kind of sometimes have to write the story for them. I'm sorry. I think the biggest gift you can give to a reporter is if they can just take it and like put it in there. I have we have had a couple of people, especially in New Hampshire, take a literal press release and print it. And what happened to my colleague was they weren't even paying attention, and then they ended up like putting her name in it. And I just know that what you put out there really should just be triple checked. And in this case, it was all the right information. It's just sometimes reporters just take that and plop it into what's going out for them. So it doesn't happen a lot. It's not common, but it does. And I think also back to the whole giving a reporter a really good story with so they don't have to do a lot of the legwork is like it's a gift. And so here are these people. They are absolutely available for comment. I can even set it up for you. Here is a Google Drive of all the photos that go with this story. Here is a video of this. Here is that. Here are quotes. That's just, that's something that they can say, all right, I've got the story here. And now I just need to kind of like fill it in a certain place. I'm going to give her a call back, get in touch with this guy, have an interview with him, get some quotes myself, but like I get it now. And so that's the usefulness, helpfulness, um, that, I'm not. I always joke. I'm like, you have to write the story for them. So
Yeah.
it's,
Which is a bit of a sad commentary on the state
I
of
know.
journalism,
It's true
but it's not.
though.
It's yeah, and I don't think it's anybody's fault. But like the thing to
No.
be aware of is that newsrooms are getting hollowed out everywhere, and so reporters are being asked to do more and more and more
Yep.
with less and less resources, and so they need help. And also they don't have a lot of time to work on these stories often. Which is another thing I'd add is that I think I'm very sensitive to this having worked in the biz, that when a reporter calls, I try to call right back. Because I remember when like there was something I was working on and I would be like, I'd go out and be at an event and then I'd come back to the office and be like, okay, I need more context, and I would start calling around to try to learn more. And if people don't call back that day, it's too late. So just remember the demands of the job. I say this all the time, that journalism is an impossible job. Like, it's an essential institution, and people like to complain about the media, but that's because they consume it so much and they wish it was better, right? But it's not. It's the reason it's not better is because it's literally an impossible job. You're asking someone to like distill all the truth of the world in a single day in 700 words, right? It's really really hard, and so that's why I think as Kate and I have been hammering on, the best way to get your issues covered is to be helpful and to be known by these reporters as someone who's helpful.
Yep.
Um, okay, so this, I think we're started nearing the ends of the slides, so we're gonna have lots of time for Q&A. I just wanted to do a little bit of understanding journalistic lingo here, because this is something that I've seen bite people because they don't understand these things. This is what I would characterize as not like PR 101. It's very much like the 201/advanced seminar, and so like be really careful here. And I'm mostly getting this terminology out there just so you understand it and are not aren't caught off guard because you don't understand how it all works. Um, one thing, they don't you don't get a license to be a journalist, right? Like, you can, like, any schmo can be plucked off the street and be plunked into a reporter job. And as such, like, journalistic ethics are sort of like it's a loose thing. Like, no one's gonna come after you for violating journalistic ethics. They're taught in newsrooms and in journalism schools, and so it's like sort of part of the culture. But again, like, there's no journalism police. Uh, so all these terms have like an understanding in journalism land, but just know, like, your mileage will vary in terms of how they get used. And the most important thing really is the relationship with the person that you're talking to, and making sure that you and they have an understanding before you go into a conversation. So with all those caveats, here's you can read what's on the screen, right? But like, on background, if you want to talk to a reporter and sort of like speak extemporaneously without worrying that the exact words that you say are going to wind up in the newspaper associated with your name, you can call a reporter and say like, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you about this, but like, it's a little sensitive, and so if we're going to have this conversation, I'd really prefer if it were on background." And then this is the key thing: is the reporter has to say like, okay, that's good. Because if the reporter doesn't consent to it, again, there's no journalism police. And if they haven't agreed to it, then they're like, the two of you don't have an agreement. And there's nothing that says they can't print what you say. The reason that reporters don't want to burn sources that talk to them on background is because reporters want to be able to call you back in the future. And if a source gets burned by a reporter, they're not going to pick up the phone the next time the reporter calls. So that's why the journalist also has an incentive to grant that request that the conversation be on background. And then like, all flowing from the same sort of premise there, that you have to come to this agreement with the journalist. You can also ask for something to be completely off the record. It's like, listen, I will tell you this, but if you want to print it in the story, someone else has to tell it to you on the record. And that's like another layer beyond on background. And then the last thing, you'll see this all the time. This is very much not something that you tend to see in New Hampshire outlets, but you'll read it in the Washington Post or the New York Times. Is that you and the reporter, if you're like, you can quote me on this, but you can't use my name. You and the reporter can come to an agreement about how you want to be identified in the story. Now, again, this is all like the advanced seminar in journalism and PR. Like, I think it's very unlikely that most of you will need all of this. I mostly share it because I've seen people think that they were having an off the record conversation, but they really weren't because the journalist did not say like, "Okay, I'm cool with this being off the record." So that's kind of the end of my rant. Kate, do you have anything you want to add about
Yeah, I
this?
mean yeah, I mean this is also why I emphasize with larger organizations media training because I can't tell you the amount of times someone has picked up the phone at like a place and it's been a reporter and I've always been like tell them you'll get back to them but instead they just start talking to them. In this one instance, somebody said something, was having a very kind of just casual conversation, and the reporter put it in like the first three sentences, and was it was rough. And so I think the media training and the understanding that, if reporters are calling for something and you're totally caught off guard, you do not have to say anything right then. You can say, "Can I get your number and call you back?" Because that is kind of, I'm like, that's kind of a strategy to get you off guard there. Sometimes I don't, maybe you don't think that, Sam, but you
No, no,
have the
no.
right to say, "I'm not prepared for this conversation. If you give me your information, I will call you back and we can have this conversation." If you want to send me some questions via email ahead of time so I know what you're looking for, I know that's not what we're talking about here, but that's also really important.
The other thing I've been noticing more and more is that reporters are now using that more and more types of reporters are recording their interviews with folks because there's so many tools. Like, you can download an app on your phone and you can use that to record. And it's much easier than like scribbling notes in shorthand. And what I've found, which is very interesting, is that New Hampshire is what's called a two-party consent state where you have to ask permission to do a recording. And it actually makes some of this a little bit easier because they say, can I record this conversation? Can I quote you in the article afterward? And then they hit the button and start recording. So it can help to know what's on the record and what's off in like a slightly clearer fashion. Just since we're swapping stories, when I was at NHPR, there was an instance where a journalist had a conversation with someone. The whole thing was recorded, but throughout the conversation, the source kept saying, "Well, like this is off the record. Okay, this is off the record." And then sometimes the journalist would say, like, "Okay, okay, okay, this can be off the record." And then sometimes they wouldn't, and it kept sort of like going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then after the story came out, the source said, "Well, hey, that was supposed to be off the record." And it turned into this whole thing where they like listened back to the recording and were like, "Where did we say it was on versus off?" And so I mostly share that just to say, like, you have to be careful. And if you're dealing with something sensitive, the smart thing to do is exactly what Kate said, to just like take a beat, think it through, ask them to call you back, get questions in writing, and just try to think about what you're willing to say and what would be problematic for you to be saying out in public.
Yeah.
So I think we're here. We're into
Oh,
Q&A.
oh,
Um,
do you want to provide a phone number?
oh, sorry. Uh,
I'm
apologies.
good. I did not see that.
So we've got Kate's email, and if she wants to provide her phone number, she can in the chat. Sorry about that. Um, and do we have? So we've got a Q&A. Catherine, have you had a chance to look? Have we been getting questions along the line?
We've gotten a single question so far. So, folks, if you have any questions, please send them in and we will be doing those live.
Okay, so I see Ken is asking, what's the optimum word count for a press release, letter to the editor, and op-ed? Kate, do you want to take a swing at that first?
Yeah, so I feel like press release is like 300 to 400. What I'll say is just like do you want to receive something that is like super long and full of information? Like, are you going to read that? Like, make a good kind of, look back at what you wrote and say, all right, I have too many quotes, or I can take that out. You want it to be succinct. You want it to be succinct, but have the information. So like I hate the word count thing just because it's really hard to kind of, work in something and say, I think just make your best kind of recommendation on what you think would be best. Again, not super long, not super short, but like a good, like it's, yeah, they say 300 to 400. Um, Op-eds are different. I think op-eds in New Hampshire they have to be, what is it, like, is it 600 words, characters?
It's certainly around there. I mean,
Yeah,
often if you look at the website that
they
where you
each
can
have a
submit,
different one. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And that's I think that's probably the easiest thing is to
yeah,
ask. If it doesn't say online, you can write it and be like, hey, how many words would you all accept? And
yeah.
there is some flexibility I've found. If you write an op-ed, if it's a really meaty subject that's of great importance, then they might be willing to like let you stretch to 700 or 900 words. But um, it's remarkable how short 700 words is, right? It's hard to say much, and it's why journalism is impossible, as is opinion writing. It's really hard.
Yeah, I mean, Sam, do you agree, like press release wise, like you don't want to have like a, you know, long, like, 2 page full of, but you got to have, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, there are outlets, like these local papers, for instance, that are stretched super thin that will print a press release verbatim that you've sent them. And so that's the thing to know is like, is this outlet that I'm reaching out to, are they the type that will do that? And in which case you should write it so that it could be printed. But then there are others where really they're never going to print a press release. And so what you're doing with that press release is slightly different, right? It's like you're trying to provide them like key things that they can pull out for whatever version of their story that they're going to do. And so that can be quotes, it can be numbers and figures. And so again, it gets to like know the outlet, understand what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay, Dory says, at the Hub, we have great relationships with journalists at a few important outlets. There's one local outlet, however, that has never responded to us over several years. Do you have any recommendations for how to break through? Oh,
I have a
fascinating.
feeling I know who this one is if it's New Hampshire.
Well, I won't make you say it out loud if you don't want to.
I could be wrong. I don't know if it's, I don't know if it's WMUR. I hear this a lot.
It can be hard
Maybe
to get
it's
on WMUR.
NHBR.
So it's funny. That I think that's a tough question to answer. But she says no, it's a local
Okay.
paper. Yeah. So actually, knowing it's a local paper that helps a lot. So the thing that I would encourage in this instance is they've got to put a face to the name, and I wonder if there's an opportunity to just go over to the newsroom at some point and be like, hey, like we just did this thing, thought you might want to see it, and like hand them something,
Yep.
and like very little expectation that they do anything with that, but just like have a conversation in person with the folks at the newspaper so that they're like, oh, this is a human. um,
Yeah. Like somehow, appropriately aggressive. I was in the neighborhood.
right.
I fully support that. I do. Yeah. I think the meeting in person and the putting the face to the name and like I'm not, like that does make a difference.
And then the other thing, the only other idea that sort of leaps to mind, um, uh, this can be a little annoying for reporters, but when you get coverage, particularly like if a statewide outlet covers something that you've done, sending that coverage to the local outlet and and just saying like a in case you missed it email, sometimes like that competitive instinct that journalists have, you can sometimes trigger that where we're like, well, geez, like if NHPR is covering this, like it seems like we ought to be covering it too. and then maybe the next time they'll consider doing it. Um, that can be, that if we
Mm.
go back to here, I'll sort of get my screen working here. If you go back to the journalistic ethics or journalistic values slide, I think there can be a bit of a backfire there where, like the independence thing, you know, I, I can't imagine what it would be like to try to manage a newsroom because journalists are like trained to like try to be free thinkers. And so like it's like you can lead a horse to water thing, right? Like uh, the in case you missed the email might have a tendency to backfire because they might say, well, like that's already been covered. Like I don't want to cover it. So like,
Yeah,
yeah,
was just gonna say that.
but that is a tricky challenge of dealing with Dory. And we'd be happy to keep picking at it. Okay. We have an anonymous question Kate, go ahead. What are some
Yeah.
of your favorite PR tools that you use?
Well, so I mentioned in here Cision,
How do you
which
how do you spell that?
CISION. That's been around for a really long time, and that is just a massive database of, um, reporters. And it's not perfect. None of them are perfect because, like as I said before, there's a lot of moving around. But it's a great way to kind of, you can dedicate, you can put like, I want a reporter. I don't want anybody on blogs. I want somebody in New Hampshire. I don't want it in print. I mean, you can go through all of these things and then it'll pull up all of the writers in your area. And then you can even kind of whittle it down through them. Quoted is another great one. QWOTED. It's more, I use this actually more for national, but like I mean, a lot of people probably look for national. That is becoming more and more popular with writers in publications, because they put like, I'm looking for this story. So publicists and writers are on this. There is a free version and then there's the paid version. I do the free version, and then you can pitch them from this and I've had a lot of success with that. And they'll say, I'm writing for this or I'm writing for this. So that's a good one. Chat GPT. I see someone down here asking about AI. Oh, I'm not using about that, but oftentimes I will ask about certain publications. Can you tell me what writers have, done, in these magazines? What have they covered? And then I fact check everything on AI, I am saying, but when I trying to get emails or I'm trying to learn more about what they write about, I have found that super helpful, pulling what they've written in the past. So those are kind of my go-tos.
And I will just say, we keep this is maybe an obvious thing to say, but we at Clean Energy New Hampshire just have a shared Google sheet that is our media list.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like every time a reporter calls or every time we have any sort of an email interaction with a reporter, I just put their name on that list. And that's just a really simple thing that's just a good practice, and it'll help you to just like keep straight in your brain. It's like, oh, like if you're getting coverage regularly, who are the people who are doing that, and you'll have it all in one place. And it's really,
Yeah.
yeah.
The second tool was quoted, QWOTED. Somebody just asked that. Also, back to the AI, Ken. You will, oh, okay, sorry, Ken. But there are some reporters that say if there's any AI in this, I'm not reading it. And they know. Like, so just don't do it. Like, don't do it. Yep, just don't do it.
Yep. I mean, I do personally, I think, AI is a tool. There are certain things that it is good for. I think that like interacting with reporters and generating press releases is probably not one of those things. Because I agree, I can tell that they're AI techs and they're going to find that tremendously off-putting because, they're independent free thinkers that kind of thing will drive them
And they
nuts.
say it up front. I will not accept any AI generated pitches. So just don't do it.
Yeah. So okay. So now we've got a question about negative press. This is where things get really tough. And so it's tough to know exactly how to respond to this question without knowing a bit more. But but if you are working on something that has started to get negative press, um, uh, there's no one blanket strategy, but there's sort of two general approaches. One is the say nothing and let it blow over. That can work if it's the type of story that there's not going to be a recurring reason for the press to pick it back up again. If it is the type of thing that is going to have another news peg, another opportunity for the journalist to write about it, then the say nothing and let it blow over, I think, can be a bad strategy, because then you're never getting your version of the truth into the coverage as well. And that's where I think that you really ought to start to be a little bit more, like, aggressive is the wrong term, but you should start to think, like, if there's going to be a story about this, once every 3 weeks for a while, you should make sure that every time that a reporter is writing about it, that they're getting your opinion in the story as well. Because otherwise, the reality will start to, like, there'll be this, like, reality distortion effect where the opponents that you're dealing with will get to define what's real, and your view of the facts won't get into the coverage at all. That can be tricky for bigger organizations, because there are, like, permission structures that get in the way of responding to a press inquiry when it's a controversial subject, because your boss sees a bad story and they see a quote they didn't like in the story, and the response is just like, we're gonna clamp down. And I personally think that can be the wrong instinct. I don't know, Kate, if you've got any. That's a really hard one to answer. This is what we should hire a PR professional.
Yeah, that's called like crisis communications. Yeah, transparency, honesty. It's a tough one, not knowing all the details. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you covered it well.
Um, what is your favorite media
Oh,
hit to date, and what is your dream media hit? This is a fun question.
that's
Kate, do you have
probably
any
for
good
me.
ones?
God. Okay. Like I said, I've been doing this for over 20 years. And I've had a few. Recently, locally, I'd say WMUR. I've had a few of my clients get on with Fred Coker, which has just been so fun for them. It is really just, they had a huge response from it. We work with WMUR. They're great. They respect us, and so they come to us, and every story we pitch, we've got that relationship. Um, my Another big one that I had nationally for one of my clients, Terracea here in New Hampshire. I don't know if any of you guys know them, but they do outerwear, and they got best overall ski jacket last year by Ski Magazine, and it's like it blew up. It was great. Like the sales that came in from that. As a PR professional, you really want, you when I do products, I want it to come back to my client to say, wow, that was awesome. Like, people noticed it and people started taking action. It's with any story, it's with a nonprofit, it's with an event. It doesn't always happen. When it does, it just is so validating. My dream media hit, God, New York Times. New York Times. Something.
One day.
Striving. Yeah.
I'll tell two quick stories, and then I think we're at time, and we'll let you folks go. My favorite, this wasn't a single media hit, but I think it was just like great success story. Was right in 2021, right when I first started at Clean Energy New Hampshire, was when the Public Utilities Commission tried to dismantle New Hampshire Saves. And we held a press conference at one of the weatherization contractors' offices in their parking lot, basically. And we invited every insulator, every weatherization contractor in the state, and they turned out there was like 40 to 60 of them. And we had, like, all of their trucks in the parking lot, and we had a podium, and it was just, I think, perfect imagery of like here are the people whose jobs you are destroying by doing this. And it was like pushing a boulder off a hill. And after that, it was like we didn't have to do anything because there were letters to the editor being written every day. There were press stories that were just happening organically because it was like this has become a story that everyone felt like they had to cover. And there was just this onslaught of coverage that came from that press conference that I think was really instrumental in the eventual passage of a law that overturned that decision. And that's just like it was a very exciting thing. But then a fun story. My wife was a teacher, and she had a student who started a little uh, um, furniture refurbishment business in his dad's basement, and his dad was a PR guy, and he got his son onto Good Morning America
Yeah.
talking about his furniture refurbishment business, which I thought was just like the cutest thing ever. So,
Yeah.
with a good pitch, you too could be on Good Morning America.
Yeah. It's great.
Okay,
I love it.
folks,
Okay.
thank you, Kate.
Thank
Uh,
you, Sam.
and folks, you have Kate's email, and maybe
You
not her
don't have my
phone.
phone number though.
So if folks do need public relations help, feel free to reach out to Kate.
I'd love to hear from you. Okay. Happy
Okay.
Friday, everyone.
Happy Friday. Thanks all.
Bye.